Welcome to the Access Web Apps meeting for November. Tonight, we actually have a special guest with us, Richard Love. Richard's been doing quite a bit of work with Power BI, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about what Access Web Apps are in case there's people that are going to be watching this video later on and joining us and trying to learn about this newer technology. So to begin with, my name is Andy Tabis. I run this Access Web Apps group. We meet the third Tuesday of every month, and so we'd love for you to join us. Basically, what Access Web Apps are is there's two different flavors of Access. One is Access Desktop that runs on your desktop, or you can have it on your server. It requires you to install either Access Runtime or the full version of Access in order to run. And you can write VBA and that kind of stuff with it. In 2010, Microsoft released Access Web Apps, and in 2013 they revamped it and made it use a SQL Azure as a backend using SharePoint. Instead of SharePoint lists, it's SQL Azure backend. So it's a little, quite a bit more robust. But instead of using the VBA language, everything's written in macros. But what I wanted to kind of just give you a little demo of what Access Web Apps are. On my screen, I'm showing a little app that I created with Access Web Apps, and I'm going to go back. Here it says back to site, and basically I can jump back to, through Office 365, you have the ability to create an Access Web App and host it basically within SharePoint. You can also share your Access Web App to other people, whether they're inside or outside your organization. And so I've created this little MVP conference a week or two ago. Juan Soto and I were at the Access MVP conference in Redmond, and we demonstrated this one little Access Web App that I'm going to talk about. But with Access Web Apps, basically when you build your table, it automatically creates views for you. Think of views as your forms. And so it automatically creates a reports view. It automatically creates a list view and a datasheet view. I'm going to jump over to customers so you can see this a little bit better. So in here, when you create a table, it creates this list view, which gives you this auto filter at the top. So in here, I can just start typing some letters and hit enter, and it'll automatically filter down any record that has this RO in it, and I'll add another letter. So it's got an OU in it, whether it's in the name here or anywhere on this screen. So you've got this filter that's built in. So and you've got this list. As I click on this list, it automatically moves from record to record, and it also creates this option group, which has add, delete, edit, save, and cancel. That's built into every form, so you don't have to worry about exactly where to place those buttons. It also creates a datasheet view, and think of a datasheet view just like you do today. The only difference with the datasheet view today and what you use locally is that you have this little button which allows you to download this datasheet in Excel. And so you can just click on the button. It'll download, and then you can open up. I'll go ahead and open this up in Excel, and it's going to open up in another window, so I'll pop it over here real quick. So basically, it gives you that Excel view, and within this, you can go in and you can filter. You get the auto filters turned on. It's kind of got that green bar effect. Every other line is blue or white. So you've got those kind of capabilities. And then also within Access Web Apps, you've got the ability to write, instead of VBA, you have to write macros. And within those macros, you can tell it to do those things that you want. You can create your buttons, and you can have it do different things. And so Access at the MVP conference. We discussed both Access Web Apps and Access Desktop, and Microsoft announced that they're going to be putting resources into both Access Desktop as well as Access Web Apps. So for people out, Access programmers or developers out there that were concerned about either one going on the wayside, that's not going to happen. You can keep building apps with Access Desktop and Access Web Apps without fear of it going away anytime soon. So, so one of the things that within Access Web Apps, because it's all browser-based, so the beauty of being browser-based, again, you don't have to install Access Desktop on your machine. You can just open up this web app in a browser. So as long as a person has a browser, on a tablet or on their PC, they can open up and use it and not have to install Access Runtime or Access Professional or whatever. So that's one of the nice features about that is it works inside of a browser. The downside of it being in a browser is that because it's a browser, reports are not built into Access Web Apps. And so a lot of people resort to downloading a datasheet view like what I showed you, and then taking that and manipulating that within Excel to generate the kind of reports they want. Or they'll they'll create a view or a form that looks like a report, but then when you go to print it, you get the things like the URL and other pieces of it. And yes, you can use a program like the snipping tool that comes with Microsoft Windows. You can use the snipping tool to grab portions of the screen, but it's just like pretty much doing a print screen and pasting that in Word and cropping it and printing it. So it's not the best solution in the world. So a few weeks ago, Juan Soto, who happens to be the leader of AccessUserGroups.org, in which Access Web Apps is a part of that. This user group is a part of that. He approached me about building a solution for people that they want to use Access Web Apps, but they really want a paper, a downloadable paper version. And so I'm gonna move right into that. And basically, this was a demonstration. We actually presented this at the MVP conference for other MVPs and the Access product team. And we were also asked to record a portion of this presentation for Channel 9 for the Microsoft Channel 9 blog post. So when that gets posted on Channel 9, we'll certainly let everyone know so you can watch that little video. But I'll give you kind of a synopsis of that. Basically, what we've done here is that we've built these reports based in SSRS, which are SharePoint reporting services. It allows you to build reports based on SharePoint data. And since Access Web Apps are hosted within SharePoint, that data is accessible with SSRS. And so what we've done is we have an area here where you can choose the report, and this is just a list of the reports that have been built within SSRS. So you can choose one of those. And then we've got some filters here. So you've got the country. So I can either choose all countries, or I can say, I only want to look at Germany or France or whatever. And then I can choose all customers, or I can choose a specific customer. I'm going to leave that one the way it is. You can enter a start date and end date. In this case, this is Northwind's database, the old Northwind database. So it's got some old records. I put in 94 through 95. And so in here, we choose the output type as a PDF. So what I have going on here, and actually Judy was a help to make this part happen, so I appreciate her help in this. But what I do is we create a URL, and what this URL does is it builds the link to this report, and it also passes it parameters. And so the way this works is you create this URL, and I'm going to view the URL in hyperlink mode so we can click on it. And so in here, we told it the output type is PDF, so I'm just going to click on this hyperlink, and what it's going to do is go out to SSR, grab it, build the report, and it actually downloaded it. And so I'm going to go ahead and open this, and you'll see now we're looking at a PDF in the viewer, but this is a file you can download and do whatever you want with. So we've got that. It automatically creates that PDF for you, which is really nice when you need a paper copy of something. So that part works out real well. I'm going to go ahead and close that, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how that works. And so basically what Juan has done, Juan's company is IT Impact. So you'll see itimpact.com in here. But what we do is we build where the SSRS page is. Then we pass it along some different parameters. We pass it along what's the report name. We pass it along how it's rendered. In this case, we're rendering it as PDF. Notice I could choose Excel or View. We'll test those out in a minute. And then I can also pass it parameters. So in this case, we set up 4 parameters for SSRS. We set up the parameter for what country it is. We set up a parameter for the start date. We set up a parameter for the end date. And we set up a parameter for the customer name, but which we're not using right now. And so it automatically builds this information on the fly. And so if I chose here to choose Excel and then create the URL, you'll notice that it just the change that it made is it renders it to Excel. If I want to view this, and then I'm going to click on this, it's going to build this in Excel, and I'm going to go ahead and open this again, and we'll see that this is an Excel report. And we could have created the Excel report any way we wanted within SSRS. In this case, we wanted it to look similarly like the PDF, so we lift it like this. But this has all the usual functionalities that you would have with Excel, so you can look at the bottom and check out your counts and sums and work with that data. And I'm going to go ahead and close that. And then the last one I have is View. So if we click on this, actually, I'm going to go ahead and change the report, the customer list at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and choose Germany, and I'll choose all customers, and I'll change this to View. And now I can create the URL. Notice it changes the report to customer report. Shows our parameter here as Germany, and it's got our other parameters that we want. So we create the URL, we open it. This time we're going to view it. And we'll take a look. Yeah. Sometimes with my web browser, it actually it blocks that from viewing. So I think that's what it's doing right now. Let's take a quick look. I'm going to open up Internet Explorer for a second, and we're going to see if we can get that same link to work in here, since it's pulling from the same tab. We'll take a look. It's wanting me to log in. Bear with me just for a second. Yeah, so I don't auto log in there. But basically what it would do is it would just view this on the screen instead of, actually, let's try one other thing. If I can get there. New tab. I'm just going to try this real quick. It shouldn't force me to, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so it's not liking that there. But basically what it does is it views it on the screen as opposed to opening it in PDF. We find that most people, since the browser has a PDF viewer built in, that's fine for what a lot of people need. But so again, the way this works is you build the SSRS report in SSRS. You build the reports that you want, and then you can pass it the parameters. The user really doesn't realize that the report isn't opening. And I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback here, so I'm just gonna. Sorry, I was getting some feedback, so I just wanted to take care of that for a second. But again, we build the reports first in SSRS. Within SSRS, it needs to know what parameters you want to pass to it, and then the user can utilize this as though it's they're running a report right from here. The user really doesn't realize that that the report isn't inside of Access Web Apps. So it's a really good workaround for that kind of thing. I'm now going to actually pass along the controls over to Richard, and Richard's going to talk about Power BI. Now, Power BI is a very powerful data analytics tool, and within Power BI, you can create like dashboards which have graphs and a map of the United States, and you can slice it any way you want to with looking at a particular customer or a particular quarter of the year or a particular product, and really kind of slice and dice it. In one of the things that, and I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to move down in the screen, and you'll see in the Access Web App that we have what's called Power BI tiles. I want to show you this because once you create those dashboard charts and stuff, you can then pull this back into Access Web Apps and display it inside of your Access Web App. And that's so I just want to point that out in here. I don't know or think that we'll have time to cover this today, so we may need to do a follow-up presentation. But I want to let you know that that is available, and that's something that we're going to be talking about, if not today, in the probably in the next 1 or 2 meetings. So I'm going to pass the control over to Richard Love, and it'll take him a second to actually accept the presentation, the presenter role. And then he'll share his screen, and he'll be taking over very shortly. Richard, can you hear us okay?
Thanks, Andy. Tell me what you can. I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. It's a beautiful snowy scene. I think we're going to be seeing that this weekend.
Great. Right. That's my office.
All right. Thanks, Richard. Here you go.
All right, Andy. Hey, great lead-in with the SSRS browser-based reports and web apps. As Andy said, this is another angle at how you can get browser-based information out of your data, but even fundamentally more than that, really explore and understand the information in your databases. What I found is over the years as I've deployed systems, it's not so much getting the data in, whether it's through a browser, through a desktop. The real value of these systems is getting the data out and what the data tells you. Stephen Covey says, start with the end in mind. And in many ways, the whole reason for any databases we build is to provide a place to put the data so that information important to the business can come out. And I think Power BI is a tool Microsoft has been developing over the years. It started out with Power Pivot in Excel 2010 and then expanded in Excel 2013. And then just in last July, just a few months ago, they've released Power BI. And Power BI has two components. It's a web-based service to view and drill down and look at your data through dashboards and reports. and it's a desktop authoring tool for Windows. Both are free out of the gate, and then there's a premium service for $9.99 a month that gives you enhanced capability. But certainly to go in and start working with the tool, you can go in and use the free version. The only potential catch is you need a corporate or business email account to log in. You can't use Yahoo or Gmail. You need your own domain or a company domain. So my company's Harborview. I've been involved with the pharmaceutical industry, been head of global quality and senior executive in the industry for many, many years, but I've always been a system-based guy and almost as a hobby have built out systems and worked with information. And for me, when the Power BI tool came out, I shifted my entire consulting business to help the pharmaceutical industry with information management. As I like to say, it's a data-rich industry, but an information-poor industry. And I think probably the same can be said of a lot of your customers that you've developed tools for. So PowerBI.com is where you can get the information and download the software. It's also a great trove of information of training videos and presentations. And the interesting thing about Power BI is, given its history, it came out of SSRS, out of SQL Server reporting tools, and made its way into Excel. It's geared toward both enterprise level business intelligence applications, all the way down to the individual user working with Excel and self-service BI. And it's a game changer in that a lot of the other business intelligence tools will set you back tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to get into the game. And to be able to build these interactive dashboards and reports for free or for a nominal cost is amazing. And, you know, we're talking about reports, we're talking about information, but business intelligence is a little bit broader than that. And it can actually change the way you run your business. I mean, if you can get real-time, immediate access to complicated data that you can drill down, you're going to make better decisions. You're going to consolidate that data. I'll give you a link to my website later in the presentation. This is up on there, so I'm not going to go through this. But one way you can think of Power BI is pivot tables or Power Pivot on steroids. So has anyone in the audience worked with pivot tables or Power BI or Power Pivot in Excel?
Yes, I have as well.
Yeah, and so if you have, you've known how seductive and powerful the ability is just to drag and drop and work with pivot tables. Mm-hmm. Power BI takes that to a whole different level. And so I was recently at a conference with the FDA outside of Washington, D.C., where I presented on Power BI and information for the pharmaceutical industry. Showed the dashboard, showed the apps. Basically, the FDA is now requiring industry to submit metrics, submit information to the agency. And they're only asking that information for spreadsheet form. But in this highly regulated industry, my position and great success at the conference is companies are going to want to know what that data is telling them before they hand it over to the FDA. So in lieu of an inspection, the FDA can now request raw data, and I assured my colleagues FDA would be trending it and working with it, that they should also. So let's talk about Power BI and let's talk about data. Consistent with what Andy was explaining, I'm going to show you an example where the data is coming from an Access web application, but it can come from SQL Server. It can come from Excel. It can come from an Access database on your desktop. One of the great aspects of Power BI is you can link to and combine data from multiple sources. And I'll talk in a moment why that's important. But so here's Northwind. It's running in Access 2013, but it's good old Northwind. You can see the main tables, categories, customers, employees, standard interface in that for a category type. There are a bunch of different products. So like Andy, I tried to get a link to Andy's server, but on my machine, I told Andy my car was stolen in Baltimore, so I lost my rental car, so I lost all 5 computers, about $10,000 of computer equipment, laptops, everything. And so I'm scrambling to rebuild my capabilities. So I have a brand new laptop that I set up today, and so it was a little bit tricky getting in. But I did create an Access web app based on Northwind, uploaded that, and here's the standard interface that Andy was showing you in a browser. And for either SSRS or for what I'm doing, you need to enable connectivity. Basically, when you create an Access web app, you're creating an instance of an Azure database up in the cloud. And so you want to go in, and you want to turn on connectivity from my location, from any location. And then down below, I turned on the read-write capabilities, so I could, and I'll come back to that, I could edit that from a connection, the data in the database. Also, to get the SQL Server login information, you go to this view, read, write connection information. That's where you get the server name, the database, the username, and the password for that instance. And you'll need that if you connect Power BI directly to that Azure database. So here's a screenshot of the Power BI desktop app, again, free. And you can think of it as your authoring environment for the dashboards and for the reports. And again, you can see this just scratching the surface on all the data sources you can access, but I'm choosing the Azure SQL database, so I'm going to connect to that web app. Then the information that came from that connection, a dialog. And then I can choose the tables that I want to link Power BI to. And when you go through this, the systems append access to each of the table names. And then there are also system tables and things like that. But I'm just picking the main tables there, the categories table, the customers table, and I'll hit load. Power BI will pull that information in. And when you look down over to the right to the relationships window, it'll do a good job of figuring out the relationships between the Northwind tables. And so keep in mind, I'll come back to this later, this is a transactional data model. The real win when you build a business intelligence application is to do a data warehouse or a data mart, and there you're building an analytical table. You're not looking at a fully normalized relational structure. You kind of want, and in my case, I prefer one big denormalized table so that your users can drag and drop information out of that. And to jump ahead a little bit, the whole reason I think Power BI is important to Access developers is, as I indicated, the real value in a database is the information you get out of it. And you've all developed wonderful applications for your clients. You've built reports, whether they've been on the desktop, whether it's been SQL Server in the background, whether it's been a web app like Andy showed you. You built reports to get information out. I believe Power BI, which again was only released in January, for those Access developers that are a bit thoughtful, it represents a whole aftermarket for their clients. It represents a whole opportunity to go back to any client you built a database for and give them, obviously, from a business perspective, you'll charge for that, but to provide for them a new tool that they can really extract the information out of that database. And so I look at this as a real market for Access developers to go back and add real value to what they've already given their clients. But so here's the relational model that's built. And then I can just drag over, and I'll show you how that works, but visualization. So again, this should be familiar for anyone that's worked with Northwind. There's your company name over to the right, your order list, and you can see there are 830 orders in the version of Northwind I have. If I click on a company, it just filters those orders for that company, and it tells me I have 5 unique orders. So here I'm looking at a combination of order details and order ID, but there are 5 unique orders there. And wow, in less than a couple minutes, I can do this. I can press a button, publish it to the web, and now my client has browser-based access to this type of functionality. You can also create in Power BI, there are 2 types of, in general, calculations that you can do in the system. One is you can see up top where it says new column. And basically that new column is just a calculated field where in Northwind, there's a discount offered for each of the items. There's a quantity, a unit cost, and a discount. So I can calculate what that cost would be in the line item for the order. So there underneath in the formula bar, you can see I've defined a field or a column called cost. Measures are neat. Measures are unique to pivoting and business intelligence tools. And basically a measure is a calculation or a formula that covers the entire data set. And so when you filter on a data set, it recalculates, and it's an aggregate function. You can think of it as one of the aggregate functions in a query in Access. So now that I have that cost, again, when I click on a company, it'll recalculate the total revenue that company yielded, and again, number of orders. Now that I have that cost field, I can also drag and drop and start to see down in the bottom for each company the number of orders for that company, and over to the right, the cost of revenue associated with that company. And again, as I click that slicer, I filter and adjust everything. So here's the standard report that was in the Northwind's database, and you can see there, and it's a typical physical report. And for Chai, and there's sub-reports built in there. So for Chai, $5,071 in revenue. And then you can see there's a chart over to the right that has the revenue for each of the products. And it turns out that's 95 revenue. And when I drag in and put the chart visualization in and the little timeline slicer below, you can see when I clicked on 95 and I filter on category beverages to the upper left, there are my products. There's my 5,071, my total, and over to the right, there's my chart, just like the canned report, only now it's very dynamic and it's running in the browser. And as I change my time, or if I change my category, everything's dynamic and filter. So again, wow, no more than a minute to build that out. And you can see over to the far right, there are all the data tables, and for each data table, the field that you drag and drop in. There's a visualization palette where you can choose bar charts, column charts, slicers, and it's that combination of choosing a visualization and then dragging the fields into it that gives you the functionality. So it's drag and drop, and again, infinitely more powerful than Power Pivot, and a hell of a lot easier to work with. So again, I indicated that it brings the schema in for the transactional database. What you really want to do in BI, there's a whole different way of modeling things. Maybe you heard of cubes, maybe you heard of OLAP. OLTP is transactional processing, OLAP is analytical processing. There's a consulting group, the Kimball Group. The Data Warehouse Toolkit is a seminal book. You can get it on Amazon. And it talks about dimensional modeling. And dimensional modeling is you transform that data that's in your relational database, typically in that third normal form. You've got highly relational tables. And here you want to build a model, though, that's highly denormalized. And you want to have around any fact or business process dimensions that you'll slice and dice that data on. And so maybe on a subsequent meeting, I'll give an example, or up on my website, get some material on how to do dimensional modeling. But basically, the end result is, instead of those individual tables I showed you, you'd like one big, wide, denormalized table that your user, if you want to empower them and they don't know anything about data structure, they just want to have a list of fields that they drag and drop, and everything works the way it should in terms of the filters and the relationships. And the key to that is dimensional modeling and building a star schema. So how that translates into this example, I typically use an Access Data Mart. And an Access Data Mart is, in addition to the Northwind data that's up in the cloud in Azure, this is a desktop app desktop database built in Access. And you can see over to the left, I've got all my linked tables. And again, I use that through the ODBC connectivity machine DNS that I put a link back to the data. So this is linked to the Azure data table up in the cloud, the same Access app that I showed before. Only now below, you can see I've used make table queries to make tables for each of the dimensions. Those are relatively static. You don't change customers, employees, or products all that often. But your data table in the center, that's a query. That's your fact table. That's what's dynamic. That's your order details. And another thing you can do, and this is where things get really powerful, is if, like in the pharmaceutical industry, where I work with 9 different manufacturing sites, and they each have their own computer systems, each one of those sites may have a different terminology for employee or may have a different terminology for a test result. By having queries that can take those different terms, whether it's a lot number or a batch number, if we agree as an organization, we're going to call it batch number, I make a dimension called batches, and then through transforms, standardize all the terminology to batch. And those dimension tables, in essence, then act as master data and can actually transform and map individual terms to one agreed upon set of terms. And Kimball talks about that in his book and in his website about conformed dimensions. It's a very powerful thing. But in any event, now I have a desktop database, and I have the star schema with the fact table order details in the center. And when I execute that query, it's just a giant wide flat file database. So you can see here, for example, location. You'll have repeats in location for each item in each line item in the database, and that's okay. You'll repeat order numbers. That's okay for business intelligence. But what I did on location in that query is I took the city field, the state field, the zip field, the country field, and I combined it into this one string called location that when you feed to Google or to Bing, to a map application, it has what it needs to map that information in a map view. So you can, again, that's the beauty, not just of taking that raw data by connecting directly to the Northwind's database, but by massaging that data a little bit, you can do some really neat stuff with it. And so that's my data file, data orders. And now you can see when I link my Power BI to that, over to the left, over to the right, I just have one table. I don't have those 5 different tables. If I'm a user and I don't know database structure, I don't have to worry about, understanding how 5 tables join together in a relational database. I just have one table called orders, and this long list of fields that are in that table. And I can just drag those into visualizations and start to build out some really neat reports. So here's an example. Again, I have 809 orders that hadn't shipped in Northwinds. There's all my list of products, my list of suppliers, my list of categories, my list of employees, customers, and then the actual orders. And when I click any of those buttons, everything filters and updates in terms of number of orders and total amount. I can also look at each of those tables as a visual, so that I can do a rank order in terms of, well, which of my suppliers are generating the most revenue in the upper middle? Which of my categories are producing the most revenue? And again, that's dynamic. If I click on 95, that'll all sort, and I'll see that dynamically. I talked about that location. Here you go, where I can see for all 809 orders, here's my customer locations, and the size of the bubble is a function of the revenue generated. If I click over to the upper right, Germany, it zooms right in on Germany, and so you can do neat visualizations around geography. And then time, when you set up what's called the time dimension, that can be a little bit tricky for the novice, but it's very powerful because once you get a handle on it, you can zoom in and zoom out and look at trends over time, and I'll show you that in a little bit. I'm going to show you, I'll copy this right now, I'm going to show you some demos. And those demos, if you log into my PowerPoint, my Power BI site, so if you click on this first link and then log in with that username and password, everything I'm showing you, you should be able to play with and to work with. So let me go to chat, paste that in. There's the link, and then there's some of my information down below, so feel free to play with that as we go live. So I'm going to go to that website and show you some of this in action. So I'm going to click here. Here is the interface. And I don't have any dashboard set up, but here if I go to my reports, and I click, there are a number of custom controls. Again, that's a topic for another meeting. If you go on to the Microsoft site, they talk about their custom visualizations. Basically, every chart or graph or table you see is open source. Microsoft is enabling the whole community to build their own visualizations. And if approved, it appears in this gallery that you can download. And again, existing BI, if you talk about the Gartner quadrant, the Magic Quadrant for various technologies, Microsoft is just moving higher and higher and higher. They update the web service every week, the desktop every month. You'll pay tens, if not hundreds of thousands for other BI, comparable BI software. This is free, or you can have a shared account for $10 a month. So here's your basic Northwind data I talked about. Click on 94. You can see I have 121 orders for 94 down below. If I click on 95, 391, everything adjusts in real time. If I go to charts, there are my charts for my 124,000. Now, if I'll show you in the desktop phone, add total number of reports. But again, I just choose beverages. There's my breakout for my 263,000 beverages. I can drill down to 95. I'm looking at 95 beverage sales of 102,000. Here are my individual down below in the middle, my individual orders. If I click on any of these guys, if I click on this product, I can see exotic liquids supplies chai. I can see which customers, it's the dark version, section bought chai. Here are my reports that had chai on the report. Out of all my beverages, the shaded portion is the amount that was associated with chai. And then here's my employees that sold chai. And there's a total of 5,000 for 95. If I go to my locations, here's the total 809 orders. If I go to Germany, there's my orders for Germany. If I click a location, I can get the details. And again, if I just want to look at beverages in Germany, they're just my beverages in Germany. Here's the time data I was talking about. So I can choose down below. I have a number of combinations here I showed. The top is just the revenue by month. This total amount is by the actual day that those orders were taken. And if I hold over a point, I should be able to see on that day what the total amount was. I can choose on this chart, I can choose a range. You can see the chart above it reflects just that range, which there's some applications that may be useful. But the one I really like, if I go down here by year and I click 95, you can see there's just my 95 data. If I want to expand that, there's my 96 data, or I can look at it by quarter and just look at the last 2 quarters. And so this is an example of one of those custom visualizations that are up on that site. You can combine You can have up to 200 of these reports down at the bottom, so you can do a lot in terms of like a worksheet, an Excel file, and you can mix and match the data nicely. I was saying to Andy, I just threw this together to show the whiz-bang capability of the tool, but with some thought, and again, that Kimball book walks you through a life cycle for developing BI apps, you can come up with very sophisticated, specific applications that are used either for routine reporting or that let you drill down and answer questions. You can change the charts to where, for example, here's my revenue down here in the middle, but each of those colored bands is a product category. And so again, if you've worked with Excel pivot tables, you can do all the same thing that you do in Excel. One of the things you can do, which is real nice, for example, is in the Northwind database, there's a field required date and ship date. You can do things like calculate your percent on time for each supplier and look at during the time period what's been their percent on time. And if I click on the supplier, it all calculates and the order details come up. The other really neat thing is you can do these bubble plots where I can, if I go over here, here I'm seeing a few dimensions across the x-axis. Each bubble is a supplier, and they're placed to the right, to the left, based on how much revenue they've generated. They're higher if they've had a better on-time rate, or lower if they've had a lower on-time rate. And the size of the bubble and the number of orders that have been placed. So again, you can see, based on the given context, a ton of useful information. If you're going to start to ask questions of which of my suppliers generate a lot of revenue for me, but they have really crummy on-time rates. And again, if I factor that by type, you can do a lot of exploration in terms of finding trends and correlations, and then print this up and give it to senior management. So that's basically it. Just wanted to be a quick overview on business intelligence and systems. And I don't know, has anybody been able to log in from that chat area and been able to get in and do those links work?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are muted. So if you guys want to type into the chat window, that's great. It seems like there's a lot to absorb. If you were starting over from scratch with Power BI, what do you think are the first 2 or 3 things that people should know, or do you think people should start with to get going so they're not overwhelmed?
Yeah, I chose Northwinds very specifically because we all have access to that database. I would sign up for Power BI, get an account. I would connect it to Northwinds and follow some basic instruction from Microsoft and just start to explore the data. I'll give you an example on the desktop of how you could create some visualizations, how easy it is.
So you're saying basically use the local MDB that's on your hard drive for Northwind and connect to that?
I would.
So use Power BI Desktop to connect to a local Access DB?
Your desktop is your authoring environment. It's a little bit easier than the author online. And so here's a blank desktop, and I'm going to go in here, and I am going to, where am I? I'm going to go home, and I'm going to get data. And I'm going to choose, you can see I have lots of choices, but I'm just going to go to Access Database. And I'm just going to navigate over to that little simple Northwinds database that we all know and love. Now, if you're in 2013, you need to get, there's like a weird little quirk that you need to get the 2010 runtime distributable to be able to link to an Access database. So if you have any challenge with that, come get me a call or email me and I'll help you install that. But so here I'm just choosing my basic tables, customers, employees. So these are all just the tables in the Access database.
You're saying that you need to install Access 2010 runtime on your system in order to fix it?
You need a connectivity engine if you're using Access 2013 or 2016. And if you Google it, or if you want, I can give you the references. But you just have to do that. Then there's some challenges with that, but you can see how easy I have it working. So I'm running Office 365 2013, and I've got it set up that it's seamless. But you'll run into a glitch, and if you like Google, you can get all the information you need online. It's a one-stop setup. If you have trouble with it, give me a call and I'll help you with it.
Okay.
You can connect directly without any of those curveballs to SQL Server, to Excel. And if you're running Access 2010, you can connect directly without any trouble at all.
Is it because it's an MDB file instead of an ACTDB?
No. It doesn't matter if I'm using a 2013 file. I still need to go through that little bump. And
okay.
I'm waiting any week. I'm hoping they fix that. They fix so many things that they'll probably fix that soon. But it's just one little quirk that you have to navigate through.
Okay.
But no big deal. It works, and I can help you with it. And you can see how easy it is here. It brought in my tables from Northwind. Now I'm going to get basically, why don't we do a table? And I'm just going to drag over here my customer's name. And they're my customers. I can drag over my order details. Let's put that here. Let's see if it built the relationships. You need those unless you build that data marker. Yep. So it built most of the relationships I need. I'll stay away from shippers. But so that means I can go to, I can change this to a slicer. So I can choose, and then I can come over and create a table and put my order ID. I can go up here and put my customer name. And then I can go down here and put my, in order details, my product ID. I go to my product table. So you can see here I have to bounce around because I didn't combine it into one master table. But I basically pick my fields, and as long as I have those relationships, it should propagate. And then my quantity, and then my unit cost I should have here somewhere. Here's my unit price. I'm going to put that here. And so here, I'm going to take out that unit price. I'm just going to get rid of this. I don't want this for now. But so now if I click on any one of these, you can see how it filters. That's how easy it is. There's no behind the scenes magic. What I'd like to do for my details, I can show you charting my details. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to define a new column. Say cost. I'll say revenue equals quantity, and you can see if I start typing, that field comes up. Quantity, got good IntelliSense, times unit. There's my unit price. Now I've defined revenue for each of those line items. I'm not taking into account discount right now, but so then I can come down here and choose this table. And now I can just choose revenue. And it's in the calculation of unit price times, here I'll put quantity in. Now I'll reorder that by dragging this up. It's a very intuitive interface. There's not a whole lot of crazy stuff going on. So unit price times quantity equals revenue. And now that I have that revenue, I can create a chart where I can say on my axis, I want my customer, and then on my value, I want my revenue. And so there we go. And now if I take these off, just look at everything. They're all my companies and my revenue for each company. And so it gets tricky in terms of time intelligence to do it by month and to get that sorting properly, and the devil's in the details. But conceptually, you can see, I'm just going to change that table from a horizontal to vertical, and I'm going to come in here, I'm going to sort it by revenue. Now I have, in essence, a Pareto chart where I'm circulating my customers by revenue. So, and all sorts of things to explore, very intuitive, and boy, it doesn't get much better than that. And now if I want to publish this to that site we had talked about, that you have the links for, it'll ask me to sign in. I didn't save this yet. So I'm going to desktop demo. This is my desktop file I'm going to save. And now it's going to ask me for my credentials to publish it to the web. And so I was signed in, so it did. So now if I go to the demo we were looking at, this is the information I shared with you to sign in, access at 123. And I've just published all those reports, that data set, and everything we just did, linked to the desktop version of Northwind. So that's what we just did. There's the page one of what we just did, which is company, everything filters. And then here are the other reports that I showed you earlier. Here's the custom control. Because I chose that slicer, I have to turn on the custom control, and that activates that slicer. That's very similar to what was in Excel. But did that help, Andy? Did that kind of like simplify conceptually what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, it's easy, and wealth of educational material on. Again, I do think there's a whole aftermarket. I told Andy earlier, I'm open to doing consulting. So you can subcontract me out. We can build some demos. Any of the databases you've delivered, easily build out a demo. And again, I think there's a whole aftermarket. I have a whole presentation on the value that a BI initiative can bring to an organization. But very powerful technology.
Yeah, I think it's really cool.
And
Yeah,
again,
I had a conversation with Juan when I was at the MVP Summit right after the demonstration, and I just think it's very, very powerful. I could see somebody doing this full time for companies. One of the really cool things
that's the business. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the cool things that they demonstrated at the conference is, and I'm trying to remember what they used, but for instance, they went into Wikipedia and grabbed a listing of all of the state abbreviations and the state names and population and stuff like that, and they would just copy that data out of Wikipedia and basically pasted it inside of Power BI and used that as a table to reference. And it was just amazing the kind of stuff that they did.
Well, yeah, so that's all O data. You can get that. I'm trying to find out remember where that O data is, but there's a class of data called O data. And with O data, you can grab like from Flickster, like a list of movies. And when you put the URL, it looks for any tables on that URL and it extracts out those tables as data sources. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
I see another question pop up on the chat, and it says, can others see the online view without a login?
You have to have an account. On the scenes, it's an Office 365 account. And again, you can't use, there's some talk, but I don't think they're going to change this, that you need a corporate or domain name, email address to log in. But again, I can, if anybody's interested, I can spin up an Office 365 account for you. I don't think you need the premium version. You can get the free version. And I've got over 1,000 mailbox names I can generate, so I can give you the ability to run up and spin up a site if you'd like to. Just let me know and we'll set you up a harborview.com login. And then you can give that, just like I gave you the credentials in the chat box, you can provide those credentials to any of your clients.
Yeah, and I do want to point out to everyone that in the chat box at the beginning of this, Richard put his email address and his phone number. So if you want to get in contact with Richard later on, you can do that, or you can email me and I'll put you in touch with him if you forget that.
And also the credentials to log into the site that we just went through, that you can play with that Northwind data yourself.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I'm going to open it up for questions. I see Judy's out there, and Walt is out there. And I see Charles as well. Does anybody have any other questions for Richard, or does anybody have any questions about Access Web Apps in general, or any comments?
Just feedback. Was that helpful?
I'm seeing feedback. Thanks. This is really useful. Excellent. Thanks for the presentation. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Okay, and here's another one. This is great, Richard. I'll be logging into your demo site and play around. So that sounds great.
Good. Aftermarket, you can hit each of your clients again, and they'll be glad you did. And
yeah, I think that's really powerful.
Dedicated. Yeah, larger companies have dedicated business intelligence groups. Oracle, Hyperion. There are these large BI systems that are quite expensive, but provide real value to companies. And what this does is that brings it down to a whole different level. And you're absolutely right. You can make a full-time career out of this. The data coming out of the system is arguably more important. The information coming out is more important than the data that goes in.
You had mentioned a couple of 2 or 3 other products that do some similar stuff, and you mentioned they were kind of expensive. Can you give us a rundown of what the competing technologies are and what they cost?
Yeah, Tableau is an established technology, Tableau. ClickView is an established technology. If you Google Oracle BI is an established technology. They also purchased a competitor called Hyperion, which still goes by the name of Hyperion. If you Google Gartner, the Gartner Magic Quadrant on Power BI, Gartner is a high-end technology assessment group, and they have this quadrant where they put technologies as growing and impactful, lagging, not impactful. It's basically one of 4 areas in the quadrant. And since July, they have been moving Microsoft Power BI up and up and up in the highest quadrant there. And so if you Google Gartner Magic Quadrant, you'll see the report and you'll see more information on the competing technologies. But basically, the consensus is the new Microsoft, now that they've got rid of Ballmer and they have a technical, open-minded thinker in charge, this technology is a game changer.
Yeah, I agree. You know, a lot of my contacts have used Tableau in the past. This is Walt, and especially in educational management, a lot of Tableau.
Yeah.
But they have to be a large enough organization used to be they had to buy a server, which was tens of thousands of dollars. Now you can get a subscription service, but it's still at a minimum, you know, maybe several $1,000s a year, I think.
So think for free, just your consulting fees, for free, you can give your clients capability to leverage the data that are in the databases you've built. And even better, combine it with other information. I mean, one of the examples I showed at the pharmaceutical conference is a lot of quality individuals, QA, have process data and lot failure data. But if you combine that information with just one spreadsheet that also has the revenue per unit of a batch of product, now when you look at failure rates, you can see not just percent failure, but you can have a different ranking on which of my products or manufacturing sites is costing the business more, an opportunity cost for those failed lots. So the ability to mash data together, not just from your database, but from other existing, more enterprise level systems. And again, that could just be a nightly export into a CSV file from that enterprise system. Now you can take the value of what you've given the user and exponentially give them additional capability. It's huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great.
And I declined to mention, Microsoft has available iPhone and iPad and Android apps that are free also. So everything I showed you on the screen, you can bring up on your phone or you can bring up on an iPad. And I don't know if you noticed in that photograph I showed, more and more companies are going to all-in-one big touch screens. And so whether it's a conference room with a touch screen or whether you have a large monitor with a touch screen, suddenly this whole concept of visual factory and some of these lean management techniques, you can have these touch screen monitors around a manufacturing plant and everybody has real-time access to the same information and you can get powerful alignment out of that. And the iPad and the iPhone gives us senior management reports that now you can take this information and just publish it out where an executive can get it. Also a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
So those login credentials I showed you, if you have an iPhone, you go to the App Store, an iPad, download the Power BI app, log in with those same credentials, and you can explore everything I showed you on an iPhone or on an iPad or an Android. I haven't played with the Android yet.
All right, very cool.
Great.
Well, if nobody else has any questions, then I'll go ahead and shut us down. Richard, I really appreciate your time in demonstrating this. I'm sure we'll have some questions going forward, so I know for sure I'll be reaching out, and I'm sure some of the other people will as well. It looks like a really incredible technology.
Yeah, thank you,
It
Richard.
is, and I love it and enjoy it, so don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions.
Sounds great. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Yep, and thanks everyone for joining us this month.